With all the amazing Apple Silicon Macs available, I never thought that I would be saying this, but in 2023, the best bang for the buck Mac that you can buy is this Intel 27-inch 5K iMac for a few reasons. And once I give you guys the price point and the performance compared to Apple Silicon, I think you will be shocked. So make sure to stick around because I have updated numbers for you. Would you believe that you can buy a 2019 or 2020 5K iMac that costs roughly $2,500 for just $500? I couldn't believe it either, and the reason that I know this is because I'm trying to sell that 5K iMac, and I originally wanted to list it for $1,200, $1,500, but then I looked at the used prices, so I listed it for a shockingly low $850, but 2 to 3 weeks later, nobody has even asked about it. I dropped the price point down to about $700, still nobody wants it, and now looking at the other offerings, I'm gonna have to lower it down to $500. How is that even possible? Well, in just a bit, I'll tell you how you can get a great deal on one. But first, I want to mention that just that display alone in the LG Ultrafine with plastic bezels and a shaky stand is still selling for about $1,300. And I found the cheapest refurbished model, and it comes in at about $700 just for that display alone. Now, if we take a look at Apple's offering with a nice stand and metal design, it's $1,600 for that 5K display that is almost identical. And the 5K iMac comes with a display with really good speakers, with a webcam and a keyboard and a mouse and all of the computer components built in. And no, it is not a crazy outdated one. If you're looking for something older, one of my close friends actually bought a 2015 model that had an upgraded 1TB SSD, 64 gigabytes of RAM, including a keyboard and a mouse for $250 here in the same city. That is insane. Now, what Mac can you get for prices like these? Well, the new M2 Mac Mini, which is an amazing deal. Many people have said it is the best bang for the buck computer ever. That comes in at $600, comes with 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of SSD, and an M2 chip. Now, the SSD is also fairly slow, half the speed compared to last year, and comparing it to my iMac that I'm trying to sell, well, it is a lot slower. It also doesn't come with a keyboard or a mouse, and if you start upgrading the RAM, well, that is very, very expensive because it is built in. Whereas on the iMac, you have those slots built in with a cover on the back. It takes a few minutes to swap it out, and even if you buy it brand new, you can get 32 gigs for $60 compared to just 8 gigs, going from 8 to 16 for $200. Now, I want to show you guys the performance differences between these machines, and we've made videos showing that even the M1 Mac Mini can beat out the Intel 5K iMacs in many ways, and not to buy the iMac. But that was when Apple was trying to sell these. You're paying over $2,000 for one, about $2,500, and it was simply not worth the price difference. But now, when you have all that built in, you don't have to buy a separate display and all your accessories. The bang for the buck is just absolutely insane. And some people might say, well, this 5K iMac might only be good if you're doing some web browsing, some simple things, and even then, you know, the Apple Silicon ones are faster, which is absolutely true. But I was surprised seeing some updated numbers with software like Lightroom, for example, that has been improved and uses graphics, and other software that has had optimizations to make it even faster. So let's get into the performance and be ready to be surprised. Now, I want to start out with Geekbench 5 here because that's the numbers a lot of people are used to. And here in single core, the M2 Mac Mini absolutely spanks this iMac. Now, I am looking at the base model for $600 because this iMac is cheaper than that. And if we look at multi-core, the iMac actually beats it out. Now, if we switch over to Geekbench 6, the interesting thing is that it actually gave the M1 and M2 chips a boost in performance, and it lowered the performance of Intel-based Macs. So in single core, we have 2300 compared to 1600, and in multi-core, we have 9600 compared to 7700. That's a big change in actual performance. But if we take a look at Cinebench for pure 100% performance of the CPU, for example, if you're doing rendering, you're editing out photos, you're processing with that CPU, we're getting 8,000 on the M2 Mac Mini compared to 12,600. That just shows the efficiency of Apple Silicon when you're doing lots of random small tasks like in Geekbench 6, but the raw power is still there. Now, as far as graphics, the cool thing is the M2 Mac Mini gives you full graphics cores. It is not binned. It's a great value, but both in Geekbench 5's metal, the iMac beats it out, and in Geekbench 6's metal, it also beats out the M2 Mac Mini. So you have more graphics performance. And if we take a look at gaming performance with GFX Bench, once again, the iMac does have higher frames per second. Now, as far as music production using Logic, we use the new Logic benchmark. You guys can look up exactly how it runs, and the iMac was able to handle a lot more tracks without overloading. So that was very impressive. I think that also has to do with RAM. And for coders using Xcode, the Mac Mini was faster, but not by that much. Now, of course, if you're buying something older than like a 2020, 2019 that has a high core count, you're gonna have a bigger difference, but I was still very impressed. Now, for those of you guys that do photo editing, Lightroom has been very quick with that unified memory, but with the updated Lightroom that can use graphics as well and harness that graphics power, the difference was only 9 seconds in terms of export. Now, I would expect brushes to still be a little bit smoother on the M2 chip, at least if your RAM is not full, because with that 8 gigs of RAM, and if you're going with the 256 gig of storage, that's a lot slower, your system slows down dramatically if you are getting into swap, which you absolutely will, and that minute and 16 turns into 5 minutes and 10 seconds, whereas the iMac does not slow down. So in theory, that $600 iMac turns into about $1,000 once you upgrade both your RAM and your SSD. Now, as far as 4K video editing, if you're still using H.264, which a lot of cameras are, the iMac can actually render slightly faster, but if you use H.265, which I would recommend, Apple Silicon is very quick with that, and it is faster. Now, Intel Macs have one major weakness as far as video editing, and that is with new 10-bit H.265 footage, where they stutter like crazy. Even my $15,000 Mac Pro just could not handle this, whereas the Mac Mini can. Because of that, you have to transcode the footage, and doing so, the Mac Mini is more than 3 times faster, but you don't actually have to do it on the Mac Mini, which is excellent. Now, as far as ProRes footage, well, the M2 chip has ProRes decoders and encoders built in, which is mind-blowing. But because of the stronger CPU, which ProRes will use, and the graphics, the Intel machine is actually faster than this 8 gig model. But if you upgrade to 16 gigs, well, the performance is increased dramatically. So you have to do this if you use ProRes. Now, so far, the Mac Mini is very close to that iMac that costs about $2,500 brand new, and that is shocking because it's $600. But where it really starts to fall apart is when you have really heavy graphics and CPU tasks that can't use the Apple Silicon Media Engine. So for Red Raw, the time is almost triple to export that 5-minute project. And if you're denoising, say in Blackmagic Resolve, your frame rate is less than half on the Mac Mini compared to the iMac. So the Intel Macs can still be heavy hitters when it comes time to things like these. So as you guys could see, if you want to get yourself a killer deal that includes an absolutely gorgeous display. It includes your accessories. You can actually upgrade the RAM yourself up to 128 gigs, by the way. And you can actually upgrade your SSD as well. You just have to unglue that display, and there's kits online, lots of guides to do that. You could still get such a killer deal, and you don't just have to use it for web browsing. But even if you just want it for web browsing, having such a nice large screen with a desktop, speakers, everything all in one, it is the best bang for the buck in 2023 because nobody wants to buy them. And why is that? Well, I think the M1 MacBook Air is a big reason for that. Same thing with the M2 MacBook Air. A lot of people are preferring laptops. Of course, that costs more money. And then if you want a desktop setup, especially for productivity, or if you just prefer it, well, you gotta buy the display, a keyboard, mouse to do a clamshell setup. So you're spending a lot more money, but then you could take it with you. So I love that option as well, but there's just something about having a desktop that is there, that's ready, especially at that price point. So if you have the money to spend to go buy a higher end setup, to buy separate things, that makes complete sense. But if you want a computer for your kid, for somebody that is into tech, for family, I mean, this is the deal that I would recommend. So let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. And if you want to find one of these at this good of a deal, I would say look around. There's many listings that are overpriced on Facebook Marketplace, on Craigslist. They're sitting up there for months that I've seen. So then when people want to sell it, just like me, they need to drop the price, and a lot of people will. So don't be afraid to ask for a lower price. Go meet up with them and get yourself a killer deal. Click that circle above to subscribe. Check out one of those videos right over there. This has been Max, and I'll see you in the next one.